Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saman Daftarian, and I'm here to talk about the Green Movement in Iran. This issue is very important to me because I was born in Iran, and it might be interesting to you, not only because it's a global topic, but it's mainly led by students your age. Now, Iran is in the midst of a political strife right now. The Green Movement is actually evolving from that political strife. In a few seconds, I'm going to show you a very short video about an incident in the protest, and after that I'll start with explaining to you how and why the protest started. Then we'll talk about its global effects, and finally we'll talk about technology and its role in the movement. Go ahead, please. By the way, this is very graphic, so it's 30 seconds.
Nida in her chest, silent. Silencing her forever. A man who appears to be her father, desperately calling on her to open her eyes. A stranger begging her to stay awake. Don't be afraid, Nida, the man says. But Nida doesn't respond. She dies right there on the streets, another protester capturing her last moments on a cell phone camera. And just like that, Nida, who came to the square thinking she's one voice among thousands, turned into the voice of an entire opposition movement.
That older gentleman is actually her philosophy teacher. She was a philosophy major. Her name means the colony, by the way. So you're probably wondering how all this started and why it started. Well, Iran had a presidential election last June, like we do here. We had President Ahmadinejad, which you might have heard his name on the news, running for re-election. And then you had an opposition, which was a more moderate tone. It was the first time for a presidential candidate in Iran to campaign with his wife, talk about human rights. And considering that Iran, 65% of Iran's population is under the age 30, he had a lot of followers. Now, the day of the election passed, and that night, the interior minister calls the opposition candidate, which is Mousavi, and tells him to go ahead and write or go ahead and prepare his acceptance speech. And the same night, militiamen actually invade the building and lock it up. Next day, the Iranian state media announces that Ahmadinejad is actually the winner, and he is re-elected. He gives his acceptance speech, and that's what sparks it. Millions of people march onto the streets, like you see an image behind me, carrying green banners, green wristbands, green t-shirts, anything green. Green was the color of the campaign of Mousavi's presidential election, or presidential campaign, which became the color of the movement. Now, you're probably wondering, how did the world respond to all this? There was rallies and protests in many countries in support of the protesters in Iran. Switzerland, Sweden, France, Germany, Canada. Here in the U.S., in Texas, we had protests in Dallas, Houston, even Austin at the Capitol building downtown. Now, some of the musicians were involved. If you were to go to a Coldplay or a U2 tour, a concert during their tour right now, they would have a green backdrop, and they would have photos and images of the protest like you see behind me. For the first time in history, we have 44 Nobel Prize winners sign one petition raising awareness to human rights violations in Iran. And the reason I chose this video, even though it's graphic, is because this video actually 3 weeks ago won the Polk Award in New York. And what was interesting is it's the first time they actually awarded it to an anonymous video. Of course, whoever taped this with their phone was a protester and would like to stay anonymous. And it was interesting. It was the first time they've ever given the prize to an anonymous video. Also, World Press Competition in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago, an image of the protest won the top prize. Now, after the election, when the state media announced that Ahmadinejad is the winner and the people hit the streets, at this point they kicked out about 80 plus foreign reporters that were there to report the election. And they actually imprisoned most of the local journalists and reporters. So you should probably wonder, how did the world hear about this? Which finally brings me to technology. Now, it was actually students like you with camera phones and all sorts of technology we take for granted today, social media such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the images, the videos, and the gatherings were coordinated through these media websites. And according to Time magazine, U.S. State Department actually intervened with Twitter's yearly software update because it was in the middle of one of these protests and they did not want the information flow to be interrupted. Well, now we know how the presidential campaign grew into a protest and how the protest grew into a movement. And We've heard about its global impacts, but you are now a part of it. And from this day on, I believe we all will probably look at our social media networks and technology with a different view and realize its power. So it's been a pleasure sharing this with you guys. Thank you so much.